Hello, and welcome to our webcast for May 13, 2016. My name is Christian Lebré, and this is Amy Asbrook, the director of Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet.
Hello.
Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet is a non-religious organization by and for people with disabilities and our allies. Our goal is to inform, unify, and give voice to disability rights opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and other ending of life practices that discriminate against people with disabilities. Today's topics: progress of Bill C-14. And the second subject is assisted suicide in film. So I give the text to Amy, and we will start our discussion.
Thanks. The progress of Bill C-14. As you know, C-14 is the bill for assisted suicide. Bill C-14 is being debated in the House of Commons and the Senate simultaneously, which is pretty unusual. Usually, legislation goes through 3 readings and committee hearings in the House of Commons and then is brought before the Senate for its consideration. However, given the tight deadline for the assisted suicide bill, both houses of Parliament are considering Bill C-14 at the same time. So that means that while the House committee met last week and was considering the amendments to the bill earlier this week, the Senate committee was hearing testimony this week and is considering amendments now.
Yeah.
And the House has next week to vote on the bill. Last week, MPs of in the House voted 235 to 75 to send Bill C-14 to committee following second reading. And that's actually a pretty
odd.
It's a pretty big departure from in 2010, where an assisted suicide bill was defeated 228 to 59. So there's been a lot of action between then and 2016, only 6 years, but it's made a lot of difference. There's been a lot of push from people who were supporting assisted suicide, and of course the Supreme Court decision made a lot of difference.
And
there.
it is mainly based on, let's say, a misconception of what is a medical aid of dying.
Right, exactly.
For most people, this phrase is palliative care, which in this law is not the case.
Right, exactly. Medical aid in dying means being killed, as opposed to palliative care, which means being taken care of while you're dying.
Yeah, with your family all around and no suffering.
Right, right. Which is really what people want.
Yes.
Except for the people who are pushing assisted suicide have created the confusion, and now we have. And
most of those people who are pushing, it's mostly because one of their relative or their close relative people had a difficult death with suffering and everything, which is not a problem of suicide or a euthanasia. The problem is doctor doesn't know really how to react, how to do things. There are lack of formation sometimes.
For taking care of pain.
Yeah, they doesn't know. And palliative care doctor, no.
Right, exactly. And also people are so afraid of becoming disabled that they think they would rather die than be disabled.
Which at the end, we know that it's not true.
Right, exactly. The bill was heard before the House of Commons Justice and Human Rights Committee, where I testified.
Yes, she was.
In my capacity as vice chair of the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition. So I was there at the committee hearings last week and testified, as with the EPC. Also, Hugh Scher was there.
Yeah.
This week, the bill was heard before the Senate's Standing Committee on Constitutional and Legal Affairs, where Rhonda Weeb, chair of the Council of Canadians with Disabilities Ending of Life Ethics Committee, testified on behalf of the CCD.
And all those 3 people, we, Hugh Scher and Amy have done a great job.
Yeah. Well, Amy sounded a little wooden when she testified, but that's okay.
No.
Yeah,
She was doing a great job.
Okay. According to news reports, more than 100 amendments have been proposed in the House of Commons to Bill C-14. Toronto's Globe and Mail reported that conservative amendments that called for the addition of terminal illness, judicial oversight, and psychological counseling for those suffering from mental illness who want to access the procedure were among those rejected by the Justice Committee.
Which is sad.
It's bad news, actually, because we've been pushing for having some kind of oversight of the process, so that instead of just one doctor receiving the application, getting a second doctor to sign off on it, determining eligibility, and then giving the assisted suicide, it seemed important to have one other person who's outside of the...
Yeah, and when they call for a judge, it should be interpreted as a wide thing. It could be anybody named ad hoc for doing the job, or a permanent judge just for that thing, or whatever solution.
Right.
An independent authority.
Right, and it's been happening since January when the Supreme Court extended the deadline.
And as far as we know, it's doing good. Even if the court are overwhelmed with cases, and
Right.
It worked perfectly.
Right. There have been several people who've had assisted suicide since January. They've all had the judge look at their requests, and they've all been approved, so there's no reason not to continue that, but apparently it was rejected.
Yeah, people who are against this rules have a proof it's wrong.
Right, and also they're rejecting psychological counseling for people with mental illness, which seems like not a very good policy, but be that as it may.
Yeah.
On the other hand, amendments to allow for assisted suicide by advance directive and to remove the requirement that natural death be, quote unquote, reasonably foreseeable were also rejected. So even though they didn't want to make an eligibility criteria that said the person had to be at the end of life, they also didn't want to remove the reasonably foreseeable natural death. So they're trying to cut between the middle there.
Yeah, but when you are seated between two chairs, you know what happened.
You fell on the floor. Yes. But it is good that they didn't add the advance directive.
I agree.
So, an amendment to allow for conscience rights and to ensure communications access were accepted by the Justice Committee, according to news reports. And that access to communications is important because not only for deaf people to be able to understand what's being said to them, but also for people with communication disabilities to be able to express clearly what they want.
And
is extremely important.
And it is true for both sides.
Right.
People who are for or against the law.
Right. So that's good that that amendment was accepted, although
yeah,
we
it's
don't
good
know
only,
what the language is.
It's good only for people, which
Right.
is a good thing for a law.
Right. But we don't know exactly what the terminology is, so hopefully that will be a well-written amendment.
We will see.
Right. We'll have to see when it comes out. The Liberals are hoping the House of Commons will approve the bill by the end of next week, which will give the Senate only a few days to act on the bill before the June 6th deadline, because there's a holiday after the end of next week. And then they have only until June 6th, so that's not too many days back from holiday.
Yeah, for determining from a subject which is very, very highly complicated, and most of the MPs or senator are not
well educated about it.
Not at all.
All they see is what's in the newspapers, and what's in the newspapers is very biased.
And what kind of pressure they could receive from their family or from a friend, I don't know.
Right. Well, you know, we tried to get in touch with a lot of senators and, you know, call them and ask for meetings and didn't get any meetings. So that was pretty frustrating.
Yeah, it's frustrating because they are supposed to understand and be educated about the subject and know the most possible, and they refuse to hurt anybody.
Right. But the other thing is they pick and choose who they want to hear from, because one of the senators said they got 100 requests for meetings, so they pick and choose who they're going to hear from.
Yeah, but sometimes the choice is not so good.
Right, exactly. If there is no law by June 6th deadline, then the language of the Carter decision will be in effect, providing meager limitations or regulations on the practice of doctor-assisted suicide in Canada.
Yeah, if you think about limitation, because all the part of the law, of criminal law, regarding this thing will just disappear.
Right.
Not existing anymore.
And the only limitation is that doctors can perform assisted suicide, can provide assisted death to people with a grievous and irremediable medical condition. That's the only limitation. So it doesn't say where or how long or anything like that.
You qualify,
like
I qualify, and most people who are handicapped qualify instantly.
Right.
So if you know anybody handicapped and you think that it may want to be killed, you just have to shoot him.
Right. And no, it has to be a doctor.
They tell you will just receive a sentence about miscarriage of medicine.
Right. But the point is that disabled people now can't, other people, non-disabled people, if they say something like, "Oh, I'm feeling so bad, I'd rather be dead right now."
Yeah, my father said
dangerous. That. It's not dangerous for a non-disabled person to say that, but it's dangerous for a disabled person to say that, because that could be interpreted as a request for assisted suicide.
My father say that every other day, and the next day he say, "Oh, I'm feeling better."
Right.
So,
right, exactly.
He changes his mind every day.
Right. Supporters of assisted suicide are already saying the proposed law, by requiring that the person's natural death be reasonably foreseeable, goes beyond the Carter decision and could be challenged on constitutional grounds. Other scholars disagree, saying that the Supreme Court decision gives Parliament broad scope to regulate assisted suicide and euthanasia. So that's been the debate for a long time, and it's going to still be debated after the law is passed. And we'll have to see if somebody brings a court case saying that they went too far. We'll see. We don't know what's going to come out in the law, so stay tuned. Okay, our second topic today is assisted suicide in film. According to the Euthanasia Research and Guidance Organization, which is part of Derek Humphrey's Final Exit group,
which is not really
which is a pro-euthanasia group.
A hard one.
Right. Since 1980, there have been about 20 feature films that have depicted suicides or assisted suicides by disabled or terminally ill people. This doesn't include made-for-TV movies, docudramas, documentaries, or that cover the same or similar subject, and it only covers films released in North America.
So it says that one film every 1.5 years on Hollywood,
right?
Which is quite a lot for a very narrow subject.
Right, exactly. It's a very narrow subject. It's not, there's some more films about disability, but it's a subset of films about disability. And it's a very narrow subset of films about disability, but there are a lot of films, and they're all about people who decide to die. All of those 20 films are about people who decide to die. And there aren't a lot of films about people deciding to live. That's sort of the point. that this film narrative is about people with disabilities should die.
Yeah, this is it is not half and half or something like that. It's all disabled people have to suicide or be killed in all those films.
Right, right. Next month we'll bring the latest of these films. Me Before You, scheduled for release in North America on June 3rd, concerns a man who, after becoming quadriplegic in a motorcycle accident, goes to Switzerland for an assisted suicide. I'm sorry, I just gave away the plot. But this is really important because, again, it's romanticizing that, you know, he's giving up his life and it's a noble thing to do and blah, blah, blah. And it makes him out to be a nice guy because he's killing himself.
There's no noble thing about killing yourself.
Right, exactly.
Handicap or not.
Right, exactly. And, you know, of course, it's seen as a tragedy, but really, you know, it's not so tragic as all that because, you know, he's disabled. So really, you know, he's being liberated. Anyway, disabled people have protested similar films as promoting death as an appropriate response to disability. Films such as Whose Life Is It Anyway from 1981, $1 Million Baby and The Sea Inside from 2004, and Amour from 2012 promote assisted suicide as the tragic but logical outcome to becoming severely disabled. And those are, like I said, we have 20 films. Those are just a few of the most famous ones that I pulled from the list. Usually these stories do not question the conditions under which disabled people live.
But it's very important.
Right. For example, in $1 Million Baby, there was no explanation as to why the main character ends up in a nursing home and loses a leg to untreated bed sores.
Which is a mistreatment.
Right. Well, it's not only a mistreatment, but it's very unrealistic. Most quadriplegics don't end up in nursing homes. In the United States, anyway, they get to live on their own through independent living programs.
We know very well few people who are in this condition and living a good life.
Right. And the goal is independent living. It's not staying in a nursing home. And, you know, supposedly the character was a spunky fighter, so why would she end up in a nursing home? That doesn't make any sense. But it shows how ignorant the filmmakers are, and it shows their agenda, what they're trying to portray about disability. They're focused on the central plot device, the disabled person must die. Because few non-disabled people encounter disabled people in their everyday lives, media depictions form the core of society's image of disability. When disabled people are shown committing suicide instead of wanting to live, it has an effect on how people see disabled people. That might seem really obvious, but it's important to remember that if you only have a few movies about disability, half of them are about inspirational, plucky, disabled people that are unrealistic, and the other half are about people who commit suicide.
A lot of people see those movies.
Right.
But not so many people see handicapped people in their real life.
And it gives people a very unrealistic idea of what it means to be disabled.
Yeah.
And so if they become disabled, then there's real trouble. This leads to incidents like what happened to Tim Bowers. In 2013, Bowers fell from a tree while hunting and was paralyzed. He was woken from a coma while on life support and told he would never walk again or hold his infant son. Then he was asked if he wanted to be kept on life support. So he's woken up, he's just told that he's disabled.
Yeah, wake up. You will never
disabled.
walk again, and you will not be able to carry your baby in your hand for the rest of your life if you have a good life.
Right.
And now take a decision.
Right.
Do you want to be killed?
Right.
Do you want to suicide yourself, or
Right.
do you want
us to leave you on life support, or do you want to die, go peacefully. That's the way they asked the question.
Yeah, so when...
So after that biased and pessimistic prognosis, in the shock of discovering he was disabled, and without time, help, or encouragement to adjust to his disability, he elected to have life support discontinued.
No griefs about his disability,
Right.
no time, no adaptation, no proposition, no
Right.
nothing,
Right.
and take a decision.
Right. When your family's all around saying, oh, your life is over, how are you going to be able to have a positive outlook if everybody around you is saying negative things? So it's not surprising he decided to end his life, but again, that comes from this idea that it's noble for disabled people to commit suicide. Activist John Kelly from Not Dead Yet in the United States is calling on disabled people to protest at the opening of the film to show that disability is not a fate worse than death, that suicide is not a noble and beautiful act, and that disabled people are not dead yet.
And John Kelly is a quadriplegic who lived a good life.
He's a high-level quad. He has only movement of his head and shoulders, but he lives independently.
And he's a productive member of the community.
Right. So basically, he's he's living an ordinary life as any disabled person should. And so he's countering the stereotype that's portrayed in this film, and that's what we want. People to get out to the movies to see that disability is not the end of life.
But John have control over his life because he's doing what he wants to do with his own money, his own apartment, and he trained his own people who take care of his basic needs. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so if you want to learn more about what we've talked about today, you can go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujours vivant not dead yet, all one word. You can go to our website at tvndy.ca. You can email me at info@tv-ndy.ca, or you can follow me on Twitter @TVNDY. Thanks to Christian for helping out, and thanks to you all for being there. Until next time.
See you next week.
Goodbye.
Take care. Bye.